Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. My name is Sara Binti Gibol. We would like to present about the memory components, forgetting and strategies. Lecture outcomes. Compare and contrast working memory and long-term memory in terms of duration and capacity of information processing activities in each. Second is distinguish procedural, episodic and semantic memory as component of long-term memory. Third is define declarative and procedural knowledge. Fourth is give example of explicit and implicit memory tests and describe how each relates to accessing, remembering, and forgetting. Next is discuss several causes of forgetting for working memory and long-term memory. Discuss effective strategy to help remember a movement or sequence of movement that must be performed. And last, define the encoding specificity principle as it relates to practice and test context associated with the performance of motor skill. Memory structure. I would like to explain to you about the working memory and the long-term memory. But first of all, we need to know the definition of the memory. According to the Kelvin 1985, that state the memory is the capacity that permits organism to benefit from past experience, which means that you remembering something from the past. They have a two functional system, which is the working memory or the short-term memories and the long-term memory. So the third is memory function, which is we know the storage of information. Example is putting the information in the memory, and the retrieval of information, which getting the information out of the memory. And the last is the system specific function, which is we need to use the specific function in each component. They have a two-component memory model, which is the working memory and the long-term memory. For the working memory, they have a three subsystems, which is phonological loop, visual partial sketchpad, and the central executive. For the long-term memory, they have a three subsystems, which is procedural memory, semantic memory, episodic memory. This will be explained from my friend. So I will explain to you about the working memory that have three parts. So they have three parts of the working memory. So I will explain to you the phonological loop. So the phonological loop is the working memory that deals with spoken and the written material. Consists with two parts, which is store and articulatory control. So they have two parts, which is the phonological store, that inner ear, linked to speech perception, holds information in a speech-based form. Example, spoken words for 1 to 2 seconds. Spoken words enter the store directly, which is the person who talked to you and you receive the information and keep it in your memory. So the articulatory control process is the inner voice, which is linked to speech production, used to rehearse and store verbal information from the phonological store, which is the person who talks to you. So the visual partial sketchpad, the store and processes information in a visual or spatial form. This is the second part, which is inner eyes, the inner eyes. So the visual spatial sketchpad is used for navigation. For example, that you see with your eyes the flower, so you draw it. So that's the visual partial sketchpad. For the third is the central executive, which is drive the whole system, the boss of the working memory. Actually, it is also deal with cognitive tasks such as mental, arithmetic, and problem solving. For example, when you're driving a car and at the same time you're talking, it's preferable to stop talking and concentrate on driving. The central executive is to direct attention and give the priority to particular activities. So which means that you concentrate with ones that you prefer. This example for the phonological loop, visual spatial sketchpad, and central executive. So we continue to the next slide.
Hi everything. Okay, now we go to the working memory definition. Working memory definition is a functional system that operates temporarily store and integrate workspace of information to carry out problem solving, decision making and action. That has four functions. First is enable pupil to respond according to the demands of a right now situation. Second is play a critical role in decision making, problem solving, movement, production and evaluation, and a long-term memory function. Third is adequate transfer of information into long-term memory. Fourth is serve as an interactive workspace where various memory processing activities can occur, such as integrating the information in working memory with information that has been retrieved from the more permanent that is long-term memory. So, working memory has two characteristics. First is duration and second is capacity. So, the duration is the length of time information will remain in working memory. So, human can only store the memory for 20 to 30 seconds before it forget. If the information is not processed and not rehearsal, the information will lost. Okay, second is capacity, the amount of information that will reside in working memory at any one time. Human can only store the number or digit only for 7 item, minus and plus 2 item. So the method that pupil can enable to recall for more than 5 to 9 words, that is chunking. So you can see the example of chunking. Working memory, processing of information. Information that is active in working memory is processed in such a way that it can be used to achieve the goal of the problem at hand. The goal is to remember what has just been told or shown to do, so we can do the task. For example, in badminton game, the coach had just given a specific instruction and demonstration about serving to the athlete. So the athlete must remember the instruction as they serve, but also retrieve from the long-term memory to correct their hand position. So now we go to the long-term memory. Long-term memory is a component system in the structure of memory that serves as a relatively permanent storage repository for information. The duration is unknown and the capacity is unlimited. If you aware and alert when you had the experience, the memory will probably unforgettable. Okay, the types of memory system has three. First is procedural. This is store information about how to do in specific activity. Procedural memory is the elements responsible for knowing how to do things and its unconscious thing. For example, memory of motor skill, such as we riding a bicycle and we catching a ball. Second is semantic, store our general knowledge about the world around based upon experience. So the semantic is that everyone know football is a domain by men, and also everyone know Cristiano Ronaldo is a professional footballer. Okay, third is episodic system, store our knowledge about personally experienced event. So if you can remember your sport shoes, your first sport shoes color, that is a episodic memory. Distinguish between knowing what to do and how to do. An important part of relating the three memory system of long-term memory with the learning and performance of motor skill. First is declarative knowledge, knowledge that can be verbally described, which is a talk of a knowledge about or the answer to the what, where, when, or who types of question rather than how. For example, about the work history and mathematical equations. Second is procedural knowledge, involve knowing how to do something. For example, ride a bike. We may not be able to explain how we do it, and it may involve being able to use a particular form to understand or produce language without necessarily being able to explain it.
Hello, my name is Irfan Safwan bin Kaltes. So I proceed to the next slide. Okay, about remembering and forgetting terminology. Memory is the process of storing and recalling information that was previously acquired. Memory occurs through three fundamental stages: encoding, storage, retrieval, and one more is a rehearsal. So, encoding is the crucial first step to creating a new memory. It allows the perceived item of interest to be converted into a construct that can be stored within the brain and the recall for a short-term or long-term memory. So, for example, the teacher was always creating new games to help the children encode new information into their memories. Okay, so the second, storage. For example, storage, if a group participant are given a list of words to remember and they asked to recall the fourth word on the list. Okay, so the participant go through the list in the order they had it in order to retrieve the information. So for the rehearsal, in educational psychology refers to the cognitive process in which information is repeated over and over as possible way of learning and remembering it. There are two types of memory rehearsal. The first type is called maintenance rehearsal. However, the material may fade from the working memory quickly. So, for the recall or retrieval of memory refers to the subsequent reassessing of events of information from the past, okay, which has been previously encoded and stored in the brain. So during the call, the brain replaces a pattern of natural activity that was originally generated in response to particular event, echoing the brain's perception of the real event. So we go to the next slide about assessing, remembering, and forgetting. For the first explicit memory test, it's divided by two tests. So the first recall test and the second recognition test. For the recall test, is retrieval of information from memory without a cue. There is a question and you must search your memory for the answer. For examples, say that instead of looking at a lineup, you have to describe the person you saw to a sketch artist. This is an exercise in recall. Alright, so the second is recognition test. So, recognition is a response to a sensory cue. When you see something, you compare it to information. Okay, for example, a police lineup is a class exercise in recognition. You look at several people and compare each to the person you saw commit it to a crime. So the second test of remembering and forgetting. So, implicit memory test. Implicit memory test generally attempt to show that performance on a task is enhanced by a prior episode, even though participants are not necessarily conscious aware to the effect of the prior episode on the performance. Examples of such tests include perception, identification, and fragment compilation. So, we go to the next slide. I'll pass to my friend to present it. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Wan Muhammad Iyad bin Manap. I will continue present about the causes of forgetting. There are three causes of forgetting, which is trace decay, proactive interference, and retroactive interference. I will explain about the first causes, which is trace decay. The trace decay is the explanation of forgetting in short-term memory. Assume that memories leave a trace in the brain. A trace is some form of physical or chemical changes in the neural system. Trace decay theory states that forgetting occurs as a result of the automatic decay or fading of the memory trace. Trace decay theory focuses on time and limited duration of short-term memory. This theory highlights that short-term memory can only hold information for between 15 or 30 seconds unless it is rehearsed. After this time, the information will be fade away and the person will not remember at all. For the second causes is proactive interference. Proactive interference occurs when you cannot learn a new task because of an old task that has been learned. In simple words, is all memories disrupted by the new memories. For the third causes is retroactive interference. Retroactive interference occurs when you forget a previous learned task due to the learning of a new task. In other words, later learning interferes with earlier learning where new memories disrupt old memories. Okay, next we move to the movement characteristic related to memory performance. There are two characteristics, which is location and distance characteristic and meaningfulness of the movement. For the location and distance characteristic, it means that movement endpoint location remember better than movement distance. Movement and location within the person on body space remember better than outside body space, which means a person can easily restore a memory when it involves specific location and distance of a movement. For example, we could easily memorize spatial position of various points of movement, such as the beginning and the end point of a golf swing. It also can be implication for teaching motor skill, which is emphasize limb movement and point or key spatial position during movement. A person can easily memorize about the movement when he focus on the endpoint of the movement. The second characteristic is meaningfulness of the movement, which means movement becomes meaningful if it can be related to something person knows. For example, a movement that a person familiar with them are more meaningful compared with a person that never seen the movement. It will increase the meaningfulness to the person and he will able to memorize the movement.
There is three strategies to enhance memory performance, which is increasing a movement meaningfulness, which means increase the meaningfulness of movement required to the performance skill. There are two strategies that are effective, which is visual metaphor imagery and verbal level. Okay, visual metaphoric imagery, that means when people first time to perform the new skill, they will think or produce any movement, imagery movement, to the exactly like the new skill. Okay, for example, in movie The Karate Kids, where Mr. Han used this kind of visual imagery, um, he asked Dre Parker to take off, put down, and hang in the jacket. All the movement will require in karate. And then verbal level, which mean attach specific level to the movement or something what to remember. For example, you want to memorize skill related fitness component, where which is you have to change the simple words or the more exciting words that easy to memorize. For example, Power Rangers by Coke and Sweet. Okay, power, P power, R reaction type, B for balance, C coordination, A agility, and S for speed. The second strategy is intention to remember. This strategy is know how will people to recall the memory or the movement that made earlier. There are two situations of intention to remember, which is intentional memory and incidental memory. So intentional memory is when the person aware of the upcoming test, which means they can memorize any movement or skill that will perform the situation. Is easy for people to elaborate or to perform more about the movement of skill. Okay, incidental memory is when the person is memorized but in unaware will be test later, which mean you suddenly memorize any movement or something, and suddenly it will be used a function after all. So which mean intentional memory, that you know what you want to memorize because you know that kind of skill and movement will be performed after that. And incidental in memory, you suddenly memorize something and it suddenly will be function after all. Okay, intentional and incidental memory is very important to increase the understanding of memory, and it can relate it to according and restoring information. So the third strategy to enhance memory performance is organizing, subjective organizing. It is involve the organization of information that must be remembered in a way that is meaningful to the individual. For example, dance and gymnastic floor exercise routine. Dance is thought of step by step and movement by movement. Same goes to the gymnastic. And then both of floor routines require same components such as rhythm, timing, and coordination. The last one is practice test contact effect. It is important in influence on the retention of motor skill. It is very relationship between practice and time of the test. So the contact of movement is related to the environmental, and the personal context is related to humans. Example of contact movement related to environment is, for example, you experience watching football at stadium. So the situation at the stadium is the memory, and you can remember the timing, the noisy of participant, the lighting, and everything. Personal context related to mood of individual, the limb used to make the movement, and the sitting or standing position of the object, and sensory feedback sources that available to the subject. There is example of personal contact, which means you experience by yourself. The encoding specificity principle, it is important point to consider regarding the influence of movement context on something remembering, or learning a motor skill. It is relationship between practice and test, and especially in close motor skill. For example, shoot a free throw in basketball. You must stand in essential the same place and shoot the ball through the hoop. That is the same distance from you as it was when you practice it. Turing and Thomson in 1970 said that the more the test resemble the practice, the better the retention performance will be. So that's all from us. Thank you for watching.